Imagine if, suddenly, you had access to all the power of your brain. Every memory, every idea, every hidden ability, all available at the same time. You would be able to learn any language in minutes, solve complex problems as if they were simple mental calculations, and recall every detail of your life with the precision of a camera. That sounds like a superpower, something straight out of a science fiction movie. But would it really be a blessing? Or could we be talking about a disguised curse? Today we are going to explore one of the most intriguing ideas about the human mind. What would happen if it were possible to use the full capacity of our brain? More than science, this reflection takes us into the field of philosophy and the future, a place where the questions are as fascinating as the answers. You've probably heard the myth that we only use 10% of the brain. This is one of the most repeated phrases when it comes to the mysteries of the mind. The idea became popular at the beginning of the last century and gained strength as it was repeated in books, lectures, and even movies. Who hasn't seen a scene where a character takes a magic pill or undergoes a mutation and suddenly gains access to the remaining 90%? Movies like Lucy and Limitless reinforced this vision that there is hidden potential inside us, waiting to be unlocked. But science has already made it clear. We use practically all areas of the brain. What happens is that we don't use them all at maximum power at the same time. The brain is like a gigantic city. At each moment, some neighborhoods are lit, others are active, but all have a function. Our body simply couldn't sustain the energy needed to run everything at once. To get an idea, even though it represents only 2% of our weight, the brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy. Now imagine that multiplied by 5, 10 times, it would be unfeasible. Still, the question remains, what if somehow we could break through this biological barrier? Let's set science aside for a moment and play with imagination. Imagine waking up tomorrow with a fully expanded mind. You look at the sky and can perceive every detail, every cloud, every color in maximum intensity. You hear a song and capture every instrument so clearly that you could reproduce the melody effortlessly. Your memory would be absolute, every moment of your life stored in detail, as if it had been filmed. Solving mathematical problems, learning new skills, understanding complex philosophical concepts, all of this would become as easy as riding a bike. But this ability wouldn't be just intellectual. Your consciousness would expand to almost unimaginable levels. Maybe you could feel what other people feel, interpret hidden emotions, or even predict behaviors based on patterns so subtle that no one else could perceive them. It's fascinating to think about, but also frightening. Would we really be able to live in peace knowing absolutely everything, remembering absolutely everything? If every trauma, every mistake, every loss were recorded in vivid detail, wouldn't life become unbearable? Sometimes forgetting is a gift, a natural protection that allows us to move on. If such total access were possible, the impacts on personal life would be enormous. With perfect memory, you could become an expert in any field quickly. It would be enough to read or hear something once to master the subject. However, this would also mean never forgetting anything again. Every argument, every embarrassment from the past, every mistake made would always be there, ready to resurface. And when we think about emotions, things get even more intense. Imagine feeling everything in its most extreme form. Love would be overwhelming, but sadness could be crushing. Would it be possible to control such intense feelings without losing one's sanity? And what about creativity? How would it be affected? Maybe we could create works of art so complex and perfect that they would surpass everything ever produced. But would those creations still have a soul? Part of what makes human art special is precisely our flaws, our limitations, our way of expressing imperfections. Without that, beauty might turn into something cold, mechanical, mathematically flawless, but devoid of emotion. Now imagine an ordinary person who suddenly gains this unlimited capacity. In the first days, they feel incredible, learn at absurd speed, create unprecedented things, impress everyone. But little by little, they begin to feel the weight of carrying so many memories, so many emotions, so much awareness. What seemed like a gift becomes a burden. And what if we expand this reflection to society as a whole? What would happen if we all had expanded brains? Education would change completely. Children could master advanced sciences in just a few years, making traditional teaching methods obsolete. The job market would be transformed. Entire professions would cease to exist because anyone could perform extremely complex tasks without years of experience. At first, we might imagine a paradise of knowledge, but soon a problem would arise. What if only some had access to this capacity? Imagine an elite with brains infinitely more developed than the rest of the population. Inequality would be so brutal that we would have practically two different humanities living side by side. Now picture a futuristic city where everyone is super intelligent. Political decisions are made instantly, economic systems adjust themselves, diseases are eradicated in a matter of days. It sounds wonderful, but perhaps it would also be a cold place, with no room for human vulnerability, for error, for slow learning. A perfect society can also be a society without emotion, without the unexpected, without the things that make life flavorful. And of course, we cannot forget the risks. Using the full capacity of the brain could result in an unsustainable mental overload. Our nervous system already works selectively, filtering information so that we don't go mad with overstimulation. If all that information surfaced at the same time, it would be like trying to drink water from a waterfall. Simply impossible. In addition, there's the ethical issue. If it were possible to access this capacity through technology, who would have the right to it? Would it be a privilege restricted to governments, corporations, and elites? Or could it be used as a form of control? And more, if we became super intelligent, would we still be human in the same way? What would happen to our relationships, our spirituality, our way of seeing the world? Perhaps limitation is precisely what makes us human. Pain teaches us to value joy. Forgetfulness helps us move forward. Vulnerability connects us to one another. Imperfection is not a flaw, but an essential characteristic of the human experience. And this brings us to the great final reflection. Using 100% of the brain would not only unlock unimaginable powers, but also bring pains and responsibilities we might not be able to endure. Perhaps the real challenge is not accessing hidden potential, but learning to make better use of what we already have. Every time we read a book, learn something new, or control our emotions, we are expanding our minds in a real and healthy way. We don't need to be perfect to be extraordinary. Nature may have placed limits on us not as punishment, but as protection. And if we think carefully, perhaps the true magic of the human brain is not in reaching 100% of its capacity, but in our ability to imagine what would happen if it were possible. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think you could handle all this power? Do you believe humanity would truly benefit from a limitless brain? Or would this be the beginning of new problems? Leave your opinion in the comments. I really want to know your vision about this. If this video made you reflect, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who would also love to think about this mystery. After all, maybe the greatest power of the brain is not using it all at once, but its ability to dream, imagine, and create new futures.